What's the crack, guys? Welcome back. Today we're going to build a bone breaker patch with each other. We'll start with the rhythm guitar. Before we look at any blocks, what we're going to do is just check the routing. The output here, which would normally go straight out to the speakers, we're going to set to 2A instead. There's no settings on this routing block here, and then on this we're just going to leave as default as well, center and 0 dB. Online I'm reading that Slaughter to Prevail used a 5150 for the amp. Luckily Line 6 has put 5150 amps in the Helix. We're looking for the PV Panama, which is here. By default this sounds badass, like listen to this. But we're still quite a long ways from the bone breaker sound. So on this song you'd expect that it would be super high gain and maybe really bassy and stuff like that. But what I found worked better for me instead was cutting out a lot of the bass, cutting out a lot of the mids, and actually pushing the trebles and presence a lot and not gaining too hard. The song was making me think of a very like a buzzsaw kind of sound. There's a lot of high frequencies in my ears in it. We're going to start the gain in the middle at 5. We're going to thin out the EQ with 2.1 on the bass. The mids are going to be 2.4. The treble is going to be 5.3. We're going to do 9.0 on the presence, and then the volume is going to be 9.4. Master is going to be 7.3. We're going to reduce the sag a lot down to 0.8. What this does is a higher sag is going to make it sound more like a classic amp. It's going to be like squishier, more sustainy, whereas a lower sag is going to be like tighter, more kind of punchy sound. So given that we've got a very modern metal sound here, we're going to go down to 0.8. We can leave the hum as it is, and I put the ripple at 4.8. The bias on this is going to be 7.7. And the bias X, which has a big impact on your dynamics, is going to be 0.7. And then finally I've got the resonance set to 4.0. Now as you can hear, there's a bit of a noise that's already kicked in. We'll sort that out later with a noise gate. It's sounding like this so far. Now we're going to move on to the cab page, and we are going to switch the mic down to the 4-2-1 dynamic. We're going to put the position at 4.9. Basically what this does is closer to the middle you're going to get a more harsh trebly sound. Closer to the edge you're going to get a darker bassier sound. So for me it worked out in the middle on this. All the other settings can be default on the cab. So now let's get rid of that noise so we can have a nicer time playing. We're going to go into dynamics and use the hard gate pedal. We're going to adjust the open threshold to minus 54.8. What that does is if the gate is shutting us off when there's low noise, the open threshold says when you get to this volume, stop shutting all the noise off. So I just set that a bit lower. You might need to mess with it a bit to see where it's coming on and off for you. And then the close threshold is just the opposite. It's like how quiet does it need to get before it cuts the audio off. For me, minus 38.6 was feeling good. And you want to leave these as fast as possible, as low as possible here. And that is sounding like this. And already you can hear there's more of a like on-off kind of thing happening here. Next, you probably noticed that we're playing in the wrong key. I'm playing in drop D. We're going to use the poly capo block and we're going to set it to minus 5 on the interval. What I do is I set this tracking to X fast when I'm playing or tracking, and then you can always turn it up to iron out some of the pitched artifacts when you're just listening back. The rest of the settings can be default on this block. And what we're getting now is this. After the pitch block, I'm going to add a compressor. Bone breaker has a pretty polished sound. Part of that is coming from really consistent volumes, and the compressor is just going to help you get there. We're going to do minus 30.9 on the threshold, and the ratio is going to be 4.1. We're going to set the attack and release down to as low as possible, as fast as possible, to avoid that pumping kind of sound. And it also keeps up with the pace of the song. The level is going to be minus 9.4, so we don't smack the amp too hard. Everything else is fine as default. That's giving us this. Now after the amp, I added a 10-band graphic EQ. Make sure this is in stereo, not mono, because we're going to do some amp splitting, left-right splitting in a bit. You can just use the drop down here and set it to stereo. And I'm just going to go through this quickly from top to bottom. And you can pause at any time if you need to freeze it to see the numbers. But we're going to do minus 9.1. We're going to do plus 6.3. We're going to do 0.3. We're going to do 0.1. Minus 0.8 on 500 hertz. 1000 kilohertz is going to be 0.5. 2000 kilohertz is going to be 5.3. 4000 kilohertz is going to be 8.2. 8000 kilohertz is going to be 7.4. And finally, 16,000 kilohertz is going to be 7.4 also. And the level is going to be 2.2. And that's giving us this here. So that's sounding quite thin by itself, but when you plug that into the rest of the song with the bass and the drums, it sounds great. If you try and have a lot of bass in that sound and go in on top of the bass and the drums, it's just a noisy mess. Next, we're going to emulate what they do in the studio. What they'll often do is they'll record the song multiple times and through different amps, and then they'll stack it all up and they'll pan them left and right and do all this layering to basically make it sound fatter and heavier. So we're going to add a second amp to somewhat emulate that. We're going to use the German Übersonic, and we're going to do a very similar kind of setup to the original amp. What you don't want to do when you're doing these is have the amps sounding very different. Once we've got the block, we drag it down to the second line here, and we're going to make sure we split before and not after the amp. And then the same, we're going to merge after the amps as well. We're going to make sure the split is on A, B, and we're also going to do on the mixer here, the A and B levels can be stay at 0. The pan for the 5150 or this amp is going to go left, and then the German Übersonic is going to go to the right. And then for the German Übersonic settings, we're going to do a gain of 5.6, bass of 1.5. It's all going to be very similar to the first amp. The mids are going to be 2.2, treble is going to be 7.2, presence is going to be 9.6, channel volume is going to be 7.7, master is going to be 8.7. We're going to do 0.8 on the sag. Bias is going to be 7. The bias X is going to be 0.8. That's giving us this. And the last thing we're going to add to this chain is a doubler, which is basically going to listen to our normal take or our normal playing, and it's going to make it as if we're playing twice. So like, it's going to have minor imperfections in timing and pitch and stuff. So we're only going to put that in front of the second amp, and we're going to say we don't want any of the original sound. So none of my normal playing is going to go into the second amp. Only that slightly messed up playing is going to go into the second amp, as you see here. And I usually like to turn up the slop a bit on this to make it a little bit more noticeable. And what we're getting is this. And you'll really notice that if you have headphones on, or if you've got if you're sitting in front of 2 studio speakers. If you use this technique on your own patches in future, one thing I'd suggest is when you see this green bar here, you want to make sure that their levels are roughly equal. They don't have to be perfectly equal, but you don't want one dead and one really loud. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. Last thing we're going to do with the rhythm guitar is set up the snapshots. It's really simple on this patch. On snapshot 1, the noise gate is going to be on. On snapshot 2, the noise gate's going to be off. That's everything that changes in the song for this patch. The reason we turn off the noise gate is that later in the song we have this riff here. You'll notice that if you have the noise gate on and you're playing a little quieter, you could get this. And you hear that cut off? You don't want that to happen by accident. So I just turn that gate off in that section so you can really drone and know it's not going to get cut off. Okay, let's move on to the lead guitar. The lead guitar is going to have 4 snapshots. The first one is going to be a synthesizer, which we're going to completely use this second path here for. And then all of the guitar sounds for the rest of the song after the synthesizer are going to be on that top path. Seeing as the song starts with the synthesizer on the lead guitar, we'll put that together first. For the routing, we're going to leave this at none because the guitar isn't going to be generating the sound here. We're going to use the sound generator in the synthesizer section here, which is this block. This will look pretty intimidating if you're not used to, if you haven't experimented with electronic music, but essentially what's happening, it's just going to consistently generate a noise like you're hearing now, and you can shape that noise, and we're going to use our expression pedal to manipulate it. I'm going to turn this block off for now so we can have some peace while we're editing. You'll see we're broken into 3 oscillators. We've got 1, oscillator 2, and oscillator 3 if we go down top to bottom. And we'll turn off the levels on 2 and 3 for now. That means there's no volume, so we'll only hear the first oscillator. We're going to set the octave for oscillator 1 down to 1. We're going to set the note to G. We're going to want all the notes to be the same. We don't want a harmony kind of thing going on. The level is going to be 7.5. The glide can stay as it is. So that first oscillator is sounding like this. That's just going to give us some bassness, and especially later on we're going to set up a whammy block to bring the pitch up. We just want it to retain some low kind of bassy sound. On oscillator 2, we're going to have a saw down wave instead. The octave is going to be 3. The note's going to be G as well. The glide can stay default, and the level is going to be 6.6. And that's sounding like this so far. And then on oscillator 3, we're going to use a square shape. We're going to set the octave to 2. The note's going to be G again. The level is going to be 6.7. The glide will be 2.5 again. And we can leave the rest of those settings at the bottom as default. And that's giving us this here. That doesn't sound like much so far, and it's very static. So what we need to do now is give us the ability to change the pitch with the expression pedal. So after the synth block, we're going to use the whammy block here. We're going to set the heel to 0 and the toe to 12. And the other settings are fine as default. For the position, you just want to assign that to the expression controller. So you can use it with your feet. I'm using Helix native, so I have to do weird stuff with MIDI and do it like this here. And so now when we move the pedal, we're going to get this. So now that we've got that sorted, we're going to add a vermin distortion after the synth blocks. Default settings are fine on that. And after that, we're going to add a bit crusher. The only setting we're going to change on this is we're going to turn the gain up to 9.4. And now we can listen to the synth with distortion on it. So that's still sounding very like lo-fi video gamey. We need to add some more stuff to thicken it up and fatten it up like it sounds in Bonebreaker. So we're going to add a few modulation blocks, and the first being the tremolo. Now, if you're using the floor, you're going to have to set the BPM of the song to 100, and then we set the sync here, and then we're going to use the 16th notes, and we're going to set the duty cycle to 0. So now when we turn the synth on, we're getting this sound. That's getting a little closer. After the tremolo, we're going to use the double take again, but instead of splitting the signal and running it into different amps, the idea this time is setting up unition, which you would normally have on a digital synthesizer. I maxed this out at 4, and it's basically just going to make it sound more stereo-ish. The rest of the settings are fine as default on that block. The last modulation block we're going to add on that chain is the dynamics flanger. Again, we're going to sync that up, and we're going to set that to 1 to 1, so it kind of shifts over the space of a full bar. And then we're going to turn down the mix to 32%. The rest of this block is fine as default, and that's going to give us this sound here. The last block on this chain is going to be the 10-band EQ, and we're basically just going to make a ramp with low bass up to high highs, just to push it to the front of the mix. Because again, once there's drums and there's bass and low guitars, it's going to have trouble competing in the low frequencies. So we're going to bring this up to the higher frequencies. 31 Hertz is going to be minus 3.4. 62 Hertz is going to be 1.4. 125 Hertz is going to be minus 0.8. Oh, 62 Hertz was actually supposed to be minus 1.4. 250 Hertz is minus 0.4. 500 Hertz is going to be 1.5. 1 kilohertz is going to be 3.1. 2 kilohertz is going to be 6.6, 4 kilohertz is going to be 8.6, 8 kilohertz is going to be 9.4, and 16 kilohertz is going to be 8.0. We're going to set the volume here to 1.5, and we're also going to assign that to scene so we can have something to shut it off on the other snapshots. And that's going to give us this sound here. So cool. So given that the synth is only on snapshot 1, we'll quickly go through the rest of the snapshots and say on 2, we have no synthesizer. On 3, we have no synthesizer. On 4, we have no synthesizer. And we only want this to be happening on snapshot 1, which is what we've got here. So now let's move on to snapshot 2 and get the ins and outs ready. The in can be default, and the out here can be minus 3.4. We'll start with the poly capo again to make sure that we're in the correct key with our guitar, and set to X fast. We'll make sure to use a different amp than we use on the rhythm guitar to just give a range of sounds instead of making it sound monotonous. I use the Line 6 2204 mod here. We're going to follow the same idea we did on the rhythm guitar and make sure that we've got a reasonable gain level, and we're going to thin out the EQs. So the gain's going to be 6.8. We're going to have low bass of 1.1. We're going to have the mids at 0.6. The treble is going to be 5.4. Presence is going to be 8.2. Volume is going to be 8.8. Master is going to be 8.3. Same idea with the sag. We're going to bring that down really low to 0.6. Give it a more modern sound. I did actually use the pre-mids here. You can kind of think of that as a tube screamer without using another block for the tube screamer. So it gives you gain in the mids, which is kind of what the tube screamer does. We're going to bias the amp down to 1.0 and set the bias X to 3.8. We're going to brighten the cab up a lot by using a 57 mic instead, and we're going to set the position to 1.0, which is going to be much more present sound than by default on that amp. So far we've got this sound. And next, just the same as we did on the lead guitar, we're going to use the hard gate. The default settings are fine this time. Oh, back to the amp for a moment actually. We need to set a lot of the settings to snapshots. Basically the drive, the EQ settings, and the volume settings. We're going to want to have control of those in the snapshots because those change quite a lot between just throughout the song. The last block we're going to use on the Snapshot 2 chain is a elephant and delay. We're going to make sure it's a stereo though, not mono. We're going to lock this to quarter notes and we're going to set the level to max at 6 dB. The scale is going to be 69%. The spread is going to be 8.9. And then the rest of that block will be default. That's giving us this here. We're going to look at the output again and assign the level to snapshots, but we're actually not going to change it here for 2. It's fine on 3.4. And we're going to move on to Snapshot 3 now, which is going to be basically like the rhythm sound. We're going to turn off the delay on this. The volume is going to go up to positive 3.4. And then moving over to the amp settings, we're going to just change a few things around. So the gain is going to go down to 5.1. The bass is going to drop a teeny bit to 1.0. Mids are going to be 1.1. Treble is 6.5. Presence is 8.5. And then channel volume and master, we're going to max out to 10. And that's basically just going to give us another rhythm guitar for little sections of the song. It sounds like this. That is everything on Snapshot 3. So the last thing we need to look at is Snapshot 4, which is that synthesized chop sound. To get that sound, we're just going to use the tremolo block again. And we're going to lock it to 16th notes. We're going to set the wave to saw down to give it a more violent kind of cycle. And the cycle is going to be at 0%. We're going to turn up the volume to 5. And we're going to set the output block to minus 2.1 on volume. Make sure that this note sync is 16th, not 16 triplet. I set that by accident. And that's going to give us something like this. And then on the amp, we're going to change some stuff again. The drive is going to go down to 3.6. The bass is going to be 1.1. The mids are going to be 0.6. The treble is going to be 4.9. The presence is going to be 9.7. The volume is going to be 8.9. And the master is going to be 8.6. And that's going to give us this here. And that's Bonebreaker. If you enjoyed this, guys, I've also done Cowboys from Hell and Hot for Teachers here. Cheers!